Well, good afternoon, or
Good
good morning, or good evening, depends where you are in the world.
good day to you.
You're here with me, Pete, so you're still good afternoon.
It's a day and it's good.
Yeah,
Here we are for a live stream. It's been a while, hasn't it?
we're a bit rusty. We're a bit out of practice. We haven't done a podcast for a while. But Pete, it's always been our tradition for you to introduce the podcast with some manner of minor amusement.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't got any good dad jokes today.
You've never had any good dad jokes, Pete.
It's subjective. Some of them are better than others. I agree with you. But yeah, what's the well? Sorry, that's for later. Why did the golfer bring 2 pairs of trousers to the course with him?
Go on.
In case he got a hole in one.
We keep doing this, and I have a genuine hope, Pete, that you'll make me laugh one day. And it hasn't happened very often.
It has happened though.
It has happened.
The whole cherries incident.
The elephant
that,
joke. We won't talk about that.
No, probably best not to.
Yeah, so we thought we'd just we haven't done a podcast in a while, so we thought we'd do a live stream. And traditionally, when we've done live streams, they've been after Apple events, so it's been loads of people on, and it's been really exciting. I don't know how many people will get on today, but
probably not that many.
Probably not that many, but I know quite a few have said they're not available this afternoon, so they'll be watching the rerun. So if you're watching the rerun, welcome to you in the future.
Yeah.
We here in the past are going to talk about lots of interesting things today. So let me just tell you what we've got coming up. We are going to discuss Twitter.
What's that?
And mainly, though, the tech that we're going to talk about that's been released this year is stuff that we featured on the channel, things that you guys have subscribed for. So we will, of course, talk about the various Apple events. We need to talk about the state of the Apple Silicon transition.
Definitely.
We need to ask the important questions like, where is the Mac Pro? What you promised us, Apple.
Yeah, and, it's 25 months now.
It is. In fact, to the day, today is 25 months.
Yeah. And in actual fact, it's 25 months to the revised 2-year plan.
Yes.
But we'll talk about that a bit later.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the M3 and the M2 Pro and Max, 3 nanometer, 4 nanometer, those kind of interesting conversations. And I've done a few performance projections as well. So see if you agree with my performance projections. Be interested to find out. We will talk. Sorry, Pete. Let me just finish the agenda.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I thought you had.
No, because what about Surface Pro?
Sorry, I thought you had.
What about Steam Deck?
Oh, okay. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
we will slip in some of that stuff as well. We have in the studio here today with us driving the stuff. He's going to come and say hello.
It's the person you've all been waiting for. Everyone's been waiting to see them on screen again.
This is Ben, and he's just going to come and wave and say hello. Hello, Ben. So Ben's my son, and he's kindly given up his Saturday afternoon to come and help us out. Erin, I'm trying to convince Erin to work on a Saturday, or indeed any day, is a challenge.
Yeah, and, where is she?
She's still locked in the cupboard downstairs, actually.
Is she all right?
I think she is all right because she stopped crying for help a few days ago. So.
Okay. Was that about the same time there was that odd smell coming from the cupboard?
It's not been great, has it?
No.
For her.
No.
So hello, everyone. I can see a few comments coming in. So if you've got something to add to the discussion, please throw your comment into the mix. We'll be featuring some up on the screen. That is Ben's job today. He's going to pop those up for us and join in the conversation by all means.
And just a question for everyone on the live stream. Can you let us know how the audio is? That's what we'd like to know. Is it okay for you? Sounds all right here when we've done our tests, but it'd be good to know.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can let us know. Thank you. And we also will discuss what we're doing with the podcast as well.
Yeah.
But before we do that, there has been this kind of minor tech event this year in that the social media platform Twitter has indeed been purchased.
Has it?
By Mr. Elon Musk.
Ah, okay.
So we wanted to talk about this, but what we've learned is that when you talk about Elon Musk or any of his brands, Tesla or whatever, you do seem to divide opinions. Some people absolutely love the guy and everything he does, and others don't, and there are some who are in between. So we don't know Elon Musk personally, so it's not up to us to comment on him personally. No. But I think business decisions that are made on the biggest social media platform, arguably,
Yeah, I think we can offer a view,
Offer a viewpoint.
and it is a view on the business decisions, not on any individuals or even a brand itself, really.
Yeah, and please share your views on that as well.
Definitely.
Good, folks saying good audio. So thank you very much. This Twitter acquisition.
I've got a segue into this. You can tell we're rusty. You can tell we're rusty.
Go on, Pete. Well, no, it's not. It's not so much that we're rusty. It's just that I know that you're going to trot out some appalling dad
It's
jokes.
contextual. Okay. What is the difference between bird flu and swine flu?
Let's just say I don't know.
Okay. One requires tweetment, and the other ointment.
All right, I'm going to give you that one. Even Ben's laughing.
It must be good.
It's Jose, a big hello from Germany, Bavaria. Guten Tag.
Yeah, and hello to the Philippines. Daisy in the rain.
Lovely.
Edm. Don't know who Edm is, but hello, Edm. Yeah. Nice to see you.
Absolutely. So look, the Twitter acquisition started with Elon Musk saying that it was the global. Did he call it the town center?
He called it the world's town square.
Town square, right? Okay, and there was lots of altruistic notions of what he was going to do with Twitter and everything else, and then he took charge, and it's been a bit of a whirlwind.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
So
the first thing he did was, Twitter has always had this. I don't know if you guys use Twitter, but it's always had this blue verified badge feature. So if you've got someone who is a known celebrity, for example, or a known journalistic, did you ever have the blue tick?
I might have photoshopped it on one day.
Now he was going to take that away because I think he said something like it created a lords and peasants system, and instead he then replaced it with, if you pay a subscription fee, you get a blue tick. So that then got rushed out. Everybody, well, not everybody, some people went and paid for it because they were wanting the new features. Some people just went and paid for it because they wanted the blue tick. Some people went and paid for it because they deliberately wanted to set up fake parody accounts to try and prove a point that this was going to create problems. And sure enough, it did. You had all these different people impersonating each other, and so it got pulled.
But then it got turned on again, didn't it?
It did, and then off again. Yeah. Then there's now a yellow tick, I've noticed. I've lost track of all of the different color ticks. So
it's almost reminiscent of you. Have you seen the sort of trolley tweets where it says the like button has changed color, and you're sort of tempted to click the like button on the post to find out if it has or not?
Right. Okay.
It's almost like that.
This was accompanied, though, also by stories of the developers being overworked.
Yeah.
And sleeping in the office. Yeah. And there's been photos circulating on the web of beds set up at the Twitter offices, and that aren't they being investigated by?
Yeah, because the zonal planning, as I understand it, doesn't allow for.
No, you can sleep on the street, but you're not allowed to sleep in your office.
Yeah,
as it turns out,
especially in San Francisco.
This obviously isn't great, but from the business decision point of view, the biggest thing that, of course, Elon Musk did was he fired a whole bunch of people. Now, if you're buying a company and you're going to turn it around and make big changes to it, then there may inevitably be job casualties. I don't think we have any issue with that. But the way that people were fired, that did raise an eyebrow or two for me anyway. Because it turned out that some of these developers, they logged into their Mac.
Every time!
Oh my goodness. Pete, you're allergic to live streaming. And the problem is, right, for everybody who's watching and hasn't seen Pete before, is that there's never just one. There's never one of those sneezes. So now we're all on tenterhooks, wondering when the next one is coming.
That came without any warning either.
Oh, goodness. I think you're allergic to me.
Possibly. Speaking of without any warning, yeah. So a lot of, do you see the nice segue back into the topic there?
Yeah,
you were saying.
So folks with Twitter employees fired up their Mac in the morning and was locked. And there's a message to check your email to see if you still have a job, basically. And so you go and check your email and find out you're fired. And now let's be realistic here. No one expects Elon Musk himself to go around and have a personal conversation with every employee who's being made redundant or laid off. That's not realistic. But you'd expect a management structure to be in place at Twitter so that people would have a conversation. Isn't that respectful?
Yeah.
It's so disrespectful to fire somebody over email. I'd never dream of doing that. I have unfortunately had to go through that process before.
What, you've been on the receiving end?
And also the delivering end, actually.
All right. Yeah, but not just to be clear, but you've always done it in person.
Always.
Yeah.
Well, it would never even occur to me to sack someone by email.
And I know some might argue, well, they had to do it that way because Twitter's workforce is so spread out over the world. But why would you do that? You can appreciate if someone's in a very remote part of the world, you're not going to call them in just to sack them or go out to see them just to sack them. But there is such a thing. I think it's called video conferencing.
Yeah.
Have you come across that?
Zoom. Well, there we go. I've just noticed a comment from the Equalizer who says you're also having video lockup issues. Sorry if that's happening.
Is anyone else having that?
Yeah. We have a 1 gigabit connection here to the internet, and we are on a wire rather than wireless. So apologies if there's issues. I imagine that must be with StreamYard because there's nothing wrong with our connection here. So we'll persevere with it anyway, and hopefully you get the audio at least, if nothing else.
Yeah.
And we are only streaming in 720p, and we're using the StreamYard service, but we haven't paid for the 1080p.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anyone wants to see us in any more resolutions.
It's really out of consideration for you guys. I think that's what it comes down to.
Erin could fix it, apparently. You underestimate her power.
Overestimate.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Anyway, those are some thoughts initially on Twitter. I think the human cost to it is quite high. Lots of people have lost their jobs, and I think that's really quite sad when that happens. But
of course, you can't. The way it's been done in the States, you couldn't do in the EU or in the UK. The employment laws are a lot stronger here.
Yeah,
to protect people against that kind of unceremonious, unconsulted sacking.
Yeah, and of course, Elon's finding this out, and he is being sued. So
is he?
Yeah, I did a bit of research this. So he's being sued by female former employees, claiming that the layoffs unfairly targeted female employees. He's being sued by employees generally, claiming their rights were violated because there wasn't a consultation period. He's being sued by disabled staff who claim that this ban on remote working and his insistence that there are long hours at high intensity discriminates against disabled people. Looking abroad, the head of the communications team in Germany and the whole team got fired. But
it's not great communication, really, is it? It kind of suggests you need a communications team.
Yeah, well, they're suing. The UK staff, they're suing. There was, of course, the case of Sinead McSweeney, hopefully I've pronounced that right, who was the global VP for public policy in Ireland, and the EU court blocked her firing.
Good.
Yeah. Here in the UK and in the EU generally, you can't just lay people off. In fact, it's incredibly difficult to terminate an employee.
And that's good because as an employer, it does give you pause to really consider the ramifications and the human costs of these things.
It makes you more determined as an employer to invest in making the situation work with a member of staff. Although I have to say, it doesn't always work, as I'm sure you guys understand. It doesn't always work, and then it can be quite frustrating because you're kind of trapped in this situation. But there we go. I think it's better to have the legislation than not have
Definitely. It. I like Evil Umpire's got a good comment. Twitter's sackings remind me of London banks having a fire drill. I didn't know this happened. Locking the doors, then throwing people's belongings out the window. Now, if it wasn't for the fact of the human cost of that's almost comedy sketch level, isn't it? How do we get these people out of the building? Let's have a fire drill.
It's just such weak management. And I think it's nice when somebody buys a company and has great ambitions for it. And there was clearly a lot of bloat within Twitter that needed to be trimmed down. It needs to be a more efficient beast. But you would hope that a company coming in to do that would do so with a bit of elegance
and compassion.
And compassion. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
particularly in the current economic climate, it's just anyway.
But they're not alone, and in fact, other companies. I think Meta has laid off more people than Twitter has. There's quite a lot of developers, especially, losing jobs in these current climates.
Well, in all sorts of tech companies, which is sad. Sorry for them.
We're always on the lookout for great web developers, though. So if you're of that persuasion, then send us an email. hello@constantgeekery.com. Here's a question: $44 billion. When you look at the Twitters, those of the inclination to defend Elon in everything he does, always say that Elon bought Twitter. In fact, most people say Elon bought Twitter because, of course, he did. But he didn't pay for it all himself, did he?
No, I mean, we've probably all got 44 billion down the back of the sofa, really, haven't we?
Well, you've got quite a large sofa, Pete. So
probably, yeah.
I looked it up anyway. I had a look on Reuters to find out. So Musk actually did put up 26.4 billion, but that included his existing stake in Twitter, which is worth 4 billion. Still an enormous sum of money, which has been funded largely from his shareholding in Tesla, which he's been selling off, which has caused Tesla's stock price to tank, probably temporarily. It's probably not something to worry about, but a lot of people are invested in Tesla. So they're concerned about that.
Yeah.
7.1 billion came from investors. So this includes Oracle, the technology company Oracle.
Yeah. Larry Ellison,
who is the co-founder of Oracle.
Yeah, but didn't he invest privately as well?
Did,
That's what I mean. Yeah.
And Saudi Prince Al Walid bin Talal. My Arabic is not the greatest.
No.
So he stuck in some of that money as well. The rest of the money, which is about 22 billion, just over, came from equity financing. And when you look at the final structure of the deal, the way it breaks down is that about 13 billion of that money is in loans that are secured against Twitter. So you've got this kind of split where Twitter now needs to repay those loans and also deliver a return for the investors. And that's quite a millstone, isn't it? A 13 billion debt.
I mean, just the interest payments on that.
Pretty huge. So you can see why Elon would like to get people subscribing to Twitter and monetizing the platform. Just an interesting comment from Edmund. If you wouldn't mind popping that one up, please, Ben. A lawsuit looming from Tesla investors in the US.
Quite possibly.
Who knows? Possibly. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, Elon is free to sell his shares. It is an open market. That's the way stocks and shares work. If someone's selling a lot of them, the price goes down.
Yeah. And just going back to the previous discussion point, the comment there from Philippines Real Life, isn't the several months of severance pay that they all received compassionate? It certainly would soften the blow if that's indeed what they received. I don't know one way or the other. I think even if you're getting financially compensated, it's still quite a shock if you had hopes and dreams, plans that involved you having a job at Twitter for years to come, to find out you've got a few months severance pay, however long that is. That's still quite a shock without kind of that news being introduced to you.
Yeah, there's a huge emotional cost, isn't there, to losing your job? Some people are saying they haven't had the severance pay as expected, though, and also contributions to pension funds and other things are not being made as expected. I don't know if that's true. That's just what I've read on the internet. And as we all know, not everything you read on the internet is correct.
That is true.
So, I've been thinking about this value of Twitter, though, and we are going to get onto the other tech stuff in a minute. Just drawing this conversation to a conclusion, I suppose.
Quickly.
How do you value a company? If you're going to go and buy a company, or if we were going to sell our company, how do you traditionally value a company?
Well, there's lots of mechanisms for doing it, and it depends on the type of company you have and things like that. But broadly speaking, you first of all take the assets of the company. So that's any cash they've got in the bank, any buildings, equipment, other physical assets that they have. That's the first thing you would take.
Yeah.
You'd then take any ownership of IP, intellectual property rights that they have. You would take that. You would then factor into account any guaranteed revenue. So if they have customers who are contractually committed to a period of time at a certain amount of money that would be factored in.
Goodwill.
Well, I would say goodwill goes beyond that in terms of if you've got a really strong brand, you may say, well, we've got guaranteed revenues for this period of time, but based on the brand we have, we expect that to continue. So if you have a really strong brand, take someone like Airbnb, for example, have a really strong brand marketing positioning, that goodwill would extend further than, say, a new startup in the same space.
Yeah. So that's how you would traditionally value a private company. Of course, Twitter wasn't a private company, was it? It was a public company, so it's valued broadly on what the shareholders will accept for it. It doesn't matter really. However you put all of these things in the pot, you cannot justify a valuation of $44 billion. Every way I look at it, it just doesn't make any sense. So what is actually being bought here is the power of the platform. This is a large social media platform that has the ability to influence global conditions.
Yeah.
We look at elections that have been influenced by Twitter, or people on Twitter, I should say, not Twitter itself, obviously. Insurrections, perhaps. We don't want to get political here, but all of these things can be heavily influenced by Twitter. So the value of Twitter is surely in the power of the platform.
And Ed Munn, I think, probably sums up really succinctly there. The audience is being bought.
Yeah.
It's a bit like we've always said about things like Facebook and things like that. If the product's free, then you're the product.
Yeah.
So they're buying that influence. And by the way, Airbnb aren't the ones who decide, in your other comment, Ed, on the extortionate cleaning fees. That's actual people renting out their properties decide on that value. So don't.
Because you've done some Airbnb.
I have done some Airbnb and indeed extortion to people with the cleaning fee.
Yeah. So this is something that I don't want to comment much on it, but I just want to float this out there.
Go do a floater, are you?
Ben's laughing again. Toilet humor gets the kids every time.
Every time.
So I just want to float this idea out there that those people who are investing are buying it for the power that the platform gives them. Now, they may wish to use that power for altruistic reasons and for good, or they may not. We don't know. But what you do now have is a very powerful platform in the hands of a few individuals. And I'll leave you to decide whether you think that's a good thing or possibly not a good thing.
And are those individuals aligned in their goals for that platform, altruistic or otherwise?
Who knows? Look, we can't talk about. Someone's mentioned Mastodon, so let's just go to Mastodon. Lots of people have moved on to Mastodon, and if you don't know what Mastodon is, it's basically an open source.
Mammoth.
I'm going to be unkind here and say copy of Twitter. It's not a direct copy of Twitter. It has its plus points, and Twitter has its plus points. They're different. The key to it is it's open source. You can run Mastodon on your own server, and you can connect to any other server and communicate with people. So it's decentralized control given to the people, if you like. So it's an interesting platform. What I have found is that whereas Twitter leaves me feeling quite negative, Mastodon tends to leave me feeling quite positive. But of course, if everybody moves from Twitter to Mastodon, then the same effect will happen.
Yeah, sadly, it's like, I don't know, it's like when you're at primary school and you go into the the playground to watch the fights. It's almost like inevitable, isn't it? So sometimes you go there just to watch the carnage with a bit of popcorn.
Anyway, if you're keen to try out Mastodon, I've set up a server which I'm just trialing out, and I've been trialing it just on my own, a couple of other people. But if you'd like to have a go and you'd like to join our service, drop me an email at hello@constantgeekery.com. I can't promise we'll keep the server running forever, but the great thing with Mastodon is you can move your account wherever you like. So anyway, if any of you would like to help me test out the server, then drop me an email, and we'll choose a handful of people to do that.
Interesting. And I have Edmund's last comment there. Chiming in before I must leave, Twitter won't let me update my bio because of the Mastodon link. They consider it malware. And I have seen this, that they're not allowing links to Mastodon.
Not allowing links to Mastodon. Pretty. I mean, Elon doesn't have a very high opinion of Mastodon. He did quite a childish tweet about it, although he's entitled to be annoyed with it, I suppose, because he would probably view it as a copy of the intellectual property that belongs to Twitter. So that's fine. That's his opinion. I think it's a bit much to block people putting links on their Twitter, but there we go. That's his decision. This is what you have to face up to now. Twitter is a privately owned company, and Elon Musk can do whatever he likes, and he can set whatever terms of service he likes, and people have to follow those terms of service.
Yes, he can. But to quote, there's an ancient proverb, I think it was by someone called Ben Parker, who said that with great power comes great responsibility. And you cannot doubt that Twitter has power over not just a nation, but the planet, the social fabric of the planet. So even though it is privately owned, there is a responsibility of the ownership, not just Elon, the ownership, to wield that power responsibly. And that's, to quote my friend Forrest, all I have to say about that.
Very good. We'll take a couple of questions. Algernon Sour Gravy asks us, will Mr. Musk buy Mastodon? I don't think he would be able to do that because it's open source and it's part of the Fediverse, and that means that anybody can have the source code running on their servers. So it would take a fairly fundamental change for that to become a privately owned thing. Philippines Real Life says, I don't know of any company that is in business of promoting competitors. Yeah, I agree to a degree. I think there's a difference between promoting competitors and actively dissing competitors. So something Pete and I think most people will know, but in case you don't, we run a digital agency business, and we actually work with our competitors because we're of the opinion that when you work together, you're stronger. There's plenty of work to go around, and that's just a much nicer way to do things, in our opinion. This is slightly different, but
if you're talking about, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the things that was an objective of the current management team of Twitter was to make it freer, easier for people to express themselves, even if that opinion wasn't necessarily universally held. I think it was right of free speech, not right of reach, is a term that's been going along. So surely that has to apply to everything. If you're allowing people to say, well, I like using Mastodon, here's the link to my server. If you're taking that away, are you not inhibiting that? And calling it malware is, if that's what's happening, is not accurate.
Disingenuous, if that is what's been said. I mean, of course, there is no such thing as free speech. But let's not get into that. I do kind of agree, though, that Twitter doesn't want to promote Mastodon because it's undermining its user base and its value, and it needs to make the money back. So completely understand that. But I feel they've possibly just gone a little bit over the line. That's just my personal opinion.
What do you think Elon will buy next? Oles asks. I can tell you that he's getting himself a meatball marinara for lunch from Subway.
Excellent.
There's one just down from the Twitter HQ.
I want to take Simon Potts' comment. So given that Mastodon is multiple servers, does this separate the world into separate groups, or are they merged when using? I don't want to sidetrack the whole discussion on this, but you can connect to relay servers to choose what appears on your server. You can connect to any user in the world, and as soon as you've done that, you'll see their stuff on your server. But yes, individual servers will have specific stuff that's around those local users. So you will see that certain servers are for particular interest groups. So you do need to find a server that has an interest group that you're interested in. Otherwise, you'll probably find you don't enjoy your Mastodon experience.
So if you use the analogy of the town square of the world, is it more like the pub off the town square? You go into the pub that serves the drinks or has the music or the people you like? Or are we just stretching the analogy probably too far? I do like stretching an analogy.
Yeah. Anyway, let's just quickly mention the doxing thing. I don't know that we need to have a massive opinion on this. Of course, various journalists' accounts have been banned on Twitter because or suspended, I should say, because they linked to. Go on, Pete.
I was just in case someone jumps in, that they are being reinstated now, apparently.
But there's this guy who's been posting the real-time location of Elon's private jet, and Elon's been very upset about this for a long time. He originally offered the guy $15,000, I think, to got his Twitter account. What I will say is this is publicly available information. If you know which jet belongs to Elon, you can find out where it is at any point in time. That's freely available information. All aircraft are trackable. So that's just the joys of owning a private jet, I suppose. Not something I have any experience with.
No, you don't have to do it for helicopters.
Oh. My helicopter collection is quite small, though, Pete, and they're flown by remote control. Yeah. Anyway, is it doxing to publish that information? I can kind of see Elon's point. Even if something does exist in the public domain, it doesn't mean you need to then republicize it for people. But his comments about worried about assassins, I don't think assassins need Twitter to figure out where his jet is. But that's just my take on it.
Another comment here from Philippines, real life. Apple maintains that anything that comes to your iPhone by any other means than Apple will end the world as we know it. Yes, don't disagree.
But interestingly, thanks to EU regulations, it is looking like Apple is going to have to allow other app stores.
I know, side loading. I can't see that ending badly at all.
Yeah,
maybe that's for another time.
I feel like that's too much to discuss today.
But yes,
shall we talk about some of the tech
Apples?
Releases of the year?
Yeah, let's
talk about. We all love Apple or hate Apple. Either way, it's interesting to talk about Apple. Going back to the spring, let's do these in chronological order because there was 3 main events this year, and I think we did a 3 live stream.
We did. No, we didn't do 1 live.
Oh, okay.
But we did some live.
We did some live. And let's go back to peak performance, which was the spring event. Do you remember back all that way? And the 2 things I've selected from this event to talk about are the M1 iPad Air and the Mac Studio. Now, let's start with the iPad Air. Does anybody have the M1 iPad Air? Let us know in the comment section.
You do.
I don't.
You did.
I don't.
Didn't you?
No, my wife has an iPad Air, but it's the A14.
Oh, Air. Sorry, you talk about the Air. Yeah.
I've got the M1 iPad Pro, but of course that got that comment from Philippine real life. You don't have to choose. I both hate and love Apple. Yeah, me too. Totally get that. Love the products. Detest the company, but
yeah, want to look after Tim in his dotage. So
we do feel for him, so we do keep giving him money, just so he doesn't run out of any money.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah. So has anyone got the iPad Air? I nearly got one for my wife with the M1 in it, but I went for you're going to love this. I went for the Mini instead.
Ooh, jelly scrolly.
Well, yeah, but not everyone notices that like you do.
Since I noticed that, I have noticed it on a lot of other devices as well.
Can you not unnotice it now?
Yeah, but it all depends on how the device is used, because it'll either do it in landscape mode or portrait mode, one or the other, depending on how the screen controllers are positioned in the device. And what they did with the iPad Mini is they turned it to portrait mode, which is the way you read. And so therefore you notice it all the time. Whereas on the previous Mini, it was in landscape mode. So when you held it portrait, you didn't notice.
You just said hold it, did it?
I was about to say that. Look, this is a live stream, Pete.
I know. I
cannot guarantee that my words will always come out correctly.
I think considering we've not done one of these for quite a while now, I think we're doing quite well. What do you guys think? That's probably a really bad question to ask. But...
Yeah, don't answer that. We'll talk about live streaming and what we're going to be doing in a minute. And if you're wondering why I look down, it's because that's where the comments are, by the way. It's not because I'm disinterested in the audience. What did we think about the M1 iPad Air at the time it was launched? I don't remember being overwhelmed by it. I remember being kind of surprised.
Yeah, I think we concluded that the iPad Pro, the 11-inch Pro, made a lot more sense because you got the 120 hertz screen refresh, you got LiDAR, the ultra-wide camera, Face ID, and obviously Thunderbolt USB 4, and higher starting storage and storage options beyond 256.
I always felt it confused the lineup, and I did a video, I don't know, a month back or so about how confusing the iPad lineup has got and how it's changed over the years. I put a huge amount of work into it. I don't think it's the video I've put the most work into because I had to cut out every iPad image and make these charts and stuff. But the point was that it has changed the way the lineup has been, and the approach that Apple's taken with their iPad lineup has changed over the years. And we're now in this situation where you kind of have an iPad Air with an M1 and an iPad 11-inch iPad Pro with an M1. And it's a little bit confusing for the consumer, especially now that the standard iPad Air, no, so it's not an iPad Air, standard iPad is now got the A14 that was in the previous iPad Air, and it looks like an iPad Air.
Yeah. It's bonkers.
And there just seems to be one too many iPads in that 11-inch range. So the other issue with it as well is that M1 performance is untappable by iPad OS. You can't, with the exception of perhaps LumaFusion and the new Resolve app, which isn't actually released yet, then I don't see how you can really make much use of the M1.
No, it did feel like Apple were just being pragmatic with the availability of chips, didn't it?
I think so. It's much cheaper to just use the existing SKUs, even if the iPad can't take advantage of a Mac chip with Mac specific features. It's cheaper for them to just.
Do you think originally they were planning for it to be, but everything that's happened in the last 2 or 3 years has kind of, as we're going to touch on later, messed things up a bit for them?
I think that's definitely going to have happened. Yeah. I feel like we need to see computer enthusiast comment. You're into the Star Trek Wars thing, aren't you?
Science fiction, it's called, Dave. Science fiction. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
I do actually know what science fiction is. I just like to wind Pete up. So when people are on Star Trek on the talking to the Jedi, they might use a communicator.
Yes. So they might have a badge in the shape of the Starfleet emblem, and they can tap on it to talk to people.
Like call the Death Star, that kind of thing.
Exactly that. Yeah.
My son's laughing.
Yeah. Darth Vader to the bridge. That kind of thing.
Has anyone ever done a Star Wars, Star Trek mashup like that? And if they haven't, why hasn't that happened yet? Because that needs to happen.
So many, Dave. So many.
Right.
Yeah. There's more parody in Star Trek and Star Wars and crossovers of the two than there is anything else in the entire universe.
Look, I've got to say, I tried watching Star Wars a couple of times and I fell asleep on both occasions. So I realize that makes me some kind of weird geek and possibly a bit of a heathen, but nonetheless.
You are a complete heathen.
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah, so M1 in an iPad, it makes sense from a business perspective. It doesn't really make sense from a user perspective. I've had the M1 iPad Pro since it was launched, and I stupidly spent lots of. I was about to say my money, but it wasn't my money. It was also your money, Pete. So I spent company money on an unnecessarily powerful iPad.
It's given me. I say it's given me a huge amount of joy. It really has. But what's been very interesting about it for me is because. As you probably know, if you've watched any of these podcasts for a while, we both absolutely love tech, and we get hooked in by the same as many people. We want the latest thing, and I didn't go for the iPad Pro, which was really uncharacteristic. The M1 iPad Pro, really uncharacteristic for me. I said no, I'll wait and see what your experience was like. And I've got a 2018. I've got the 2018 12-inch iPad Pro, and I still absolutely love it. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's not slow. It's not anything. And it's just taught me that sometimes you don't always have to have the very latest thing. What time is it?
And that
okay. See what I did there.
We'll get to that. And that is proof positive that the iPad experience, you can go and buy the entry-level iPad and arguably get the same iPad experience that you get with the top-end iPad. And you've got to be in a fairly niche use case to actually be able to see the benefit of having, say, 16 gigs of RAM or an M1 or even now an M2 chip.
It can run a Death Star super laser.
Anyway, but one of the things that it did do is it was messed up a key video that I had planned for the year. And I'm actually still going to shoot this video. Ben doesn't know this yet, but we're doing it on Tuesday. But I got the iPad mini. I didn't get on with the Jelly Scroll, so I sent it back. First time I've ever done that. And I bought myself a Galaxy Tab S8 because I just thought it's been a long time since I had an Android tab. I need to be up to speed with stuff. So I'm going to try that as my personal tablet.
And you do like being a bit...
I do.
different.
I do like to. I like to change things up, because if you love tech but you restrict yourself to just one company, one platform, I think that's really boring. So I like to try it all. Anyway, I really like the Galaxy Tab S8. Now I know that at the time it didn't compete on performance with the iPad Air with the A14 chip, but I was going to do this video where I investigated that, or looked into that, and discussed whether or not we feel performance actually matters to the tablet experience. But before I had time to shoot it, Apple stuck the M1 in the iPad Air, just like massively widening the gap in performance between these two devices that essentially cost the same. So I haven't done that video.
They messed you up.
Yeah,
they messed you up good.
But I've finally got my head around it. We'll shoot that next week, and so hopefully that'll be interesting for you guys. What about Mac Studio?
That was pretty cool, wasn't it?
I think they are smart, and I did purchase one.
Did you?
Yes.
You did, didn't you? You actually surprised me with it. Do you remember?
We did on a podcast, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got the M1 Max version, which is I've just got the entry level one. I trot that out like it's an expensive computer.
I've just got the base Learjet.
Yeah. sorry. Again, company purchase, get the tax back, etc., a bit cheaper. I like it. I like the form factor. I think it looks cool. I like the fact you can get the Ultra version and have two M1 Max joined together.
Yeah,
which I think is nice. We'll talk about that in a minute.
W12.
What have I found though with using it? I found that it's a bit buggy in a way that my M1 Max MacBook Pro is not.
Oh, really? Because we did have that thing when we started testing the M1 Pro Max laptops. We said they were good and they were fast, but they didn't have that buttery smoothness that previous pre-Apple Silicon Macs had.
Yes.
But you're talking about another level from that, are you?
Yeah, just odd things happening. Maybe I just need to reinstall it, but it's stuff like if you plug a USB drive into USB ports on the front, it messes up your audio.
Really? That's annoying. That's not buggy, that's annoying.
Like disconnects my audio interface and other sort of odd stuff like that. I mean, these M1 chips, they still haven't sorted out the Thunderbolt and USB completely on these things. We know that, and hopefully that will get sorted with the next generation. Possibly not till M3, but we'll see.
But what about the performance? Because that's what it's all about, isn't it?
It's amazing. And so I invested. I was going to buy a Mac Pro, if you'll remember this, Pete. And right as they announced Apple Silicon,
yeah, I remember.
So I was just about to pull the trigger on a Mac Pro. You know, it's going to be my big 25 years in tech gift to myself. I was going to spend this ludicrous amount of money on a Mac Pro, and then they announced Apple Silicon, so I decided not to. And in the end, I bought a Lenovo PC workstation with a Threadripper Pro, and I absolutely love that computer, and I use it a lot. Most of my videos are edited on a PC, as it happens, and it's incredibly powerful. But it does everything at a cost. You know, there's a lot of noise, a lot of heat, a lot of
power stations involved.
Yes, the usual x86 story. You know, the Mac Studio can compete when it comes to real-time editing. It's just as smooth. And if you're doing anything where those encoders can come into play on the chip for certain video formats, it's actually more performant.
More,
yeah. But the only area where the workstation wins out is on rendering. So it does render much quicker. But take the average YouTube video that I'm making. I mean, if I make a particularly long one, it might be 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I go and have a coffee and put my feet up. It's not a big deal if it takes a bit longer to render. So this Mac Studio that cost, a third, a quarter of the price of the workstation is, in most cases, 80% as good. And I think that's amazing.
It is
for that price.
For the price
differential.
Yeah.
Let's have a comment. Let's take a couple of comments from Oles. Too flipping right. My workstation is in the cabin, a wooden cabin in my garden that's not particularly well insulated, and it is freezing at the moment because we've got this Arctic blast thing happening. And yeah, my workstation does indeed help warm up the cabin.
What else helps warm it up?
Heaters.
Oh, okay. Not air biscuits.
No, to stop with the toilet humour. Yeah, x86 computers do indeed warm the room. I see we are Jeremy Podmore. Good to see you guys have a good stream. I think you mean stream, not Steam. We're not going to.
We have got Steam.
We have got a Steam Deck. Yeah, we'll have a look at that in a minute. Thanks for tuning in for a little while. We probably should move on. Only to say, though, just finishing on Mac Studios, it raised a lot of questions about the Mac Pro and what does that look like now.
Yeah, and that's kind of the elephant in the room from a Apple Silicon transition type of place, isn't it? Because we are now, as you say, to the day, 25 months into what was meant to be a 2-year transition. Now, I'm no calendarist or mathematician, but I have a feeling that 25 months is more than 2 years.
It is, but we're going to get to that, Pete. Keep teasing it, but we'll get to it.
Like a bit of teasing.
The comment from Protoss X, please, Ben. The comment before that, although let's have a look at that. Just get an iPhone 14 Pro and a 14-inch MacBook Pro and you're set this year. Yeah, I've got to say, 14-inch MacBook Pro, although it wasn't released this year, it is the ultimate laptop.
Not so sure about the 14 phone. One of our regular subscribers, I don't think she's on, but possibly listening a bit later, Anna, kind of is struggling to see why you would have an iPhone 14 over a 13 or even a 12.
So I still got the 12 Pro. You're using the 13 Pro. I've got no desire to upgrade. But if you're coming from an older phone, then 14 Pro is a fantastic choice.
I think your mileage may vary. Yeah. Is the answer on that.
So perhaps we could go to the other comment. No, it was the one before that. Sorry. Thank you for all your comments. So somebody else who got the M1 Pro and feels it's too much for an iPad. But of course, if you want the Pro iPad, you're getting it with an M1, and maybe it's better to look at it rather than look at it as I'm buying an M1 that I can't use. Look at it as I'm buying an iPad Pro that's got more than enough power under the hood to do everything I ever want to do on an iPad Pro.
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
We're just looking at it wrong.
Philippines Real Life says you're assuming they are using an Earth calendar. Well, there are many calendar systems that have been employed over the ages. So who knows?
Who knows? Shall we move on? Speaking of calendars, though, let's talk about WWDC. So the developer conference sometimes has hardware released. Traditionally, has been the point of release for a Mac Pro.
Yes.
So I remember being particularly excited about that. But also, as if you recall, at the end of the Peak Performance event, they did say there's news on the Mac Pro coming. So we were kind of expecting that at WWDC, or possibly it was at WWDC. Anyway, Apple teased it. We're expecting it. WWDC would have made sense, but they didn't do that. They released the M2 instead.
Yeah. How do we feel about that?
We haven't bought any.
Kind of tells you how we feel about it.
I think there's nothing wrong with the M2, and it's a definite step up over the M1.
Yeah, but it is. But should Apple have done it a year after M1 came out?
I can't see.
Do people really want that?
Possibly. I mean, where the M2 has its advantage, so it runs at a higher clock speed, which is both an advantage and a disadvantage. But it runs at a higher clock speed, so it does offer more performance in theory. A lot got featured about the fact that it overheats, although I think that was blown out of all proportion because most people using these devices, the target market, aren't going to be pushing them to that level.
No.
So the M2 is it's on they call it a 4-nanometer process, and I think TSMC call it N4P, and it is a refined process compared to the 5-nanometer process that the M1 chips are made on. So when we're talking about nanometers, we're talking about the size of the transistors. In other words, very small transistors. So if you can make the transistors smaller, you can
get more in the same space.
Yeah. And that makes them also more energy efficient. They less heat, less power consumption, etc., etc. So you can make faster chips. So the thing is with the N4P processes is that it's an iteration of the 5-nanometer process. It's not a new generation process. No. So it's not a massive difference. The main reason why the M2 is quicker is because it's got a higher clock speed and they increase the memory bandwidth over M1. So you're getting better single core performance, you're getting better multi-core performance. Where they really made a massive improvement was the GPU. So graphics is like 50% better. It's a significant bump.
Yeah. Plus, you've also then got the ProRes encoder decoder.
Right. Yes. So if you're working with ProRes, the M2 will destroy the M1.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's not knock it. It's a great system. The reason why we didn't go and buy them is because of the pricing.
Yeah. So in reality, the 14-inch MacBook Pro quickly becomes better as you start trying to spec up an M2 machine, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think if you're doing anything other than the basic standard spec, you're into the territory where you can go on Amazon and get an 14-inch M1 Pro.
Yeah, so you got the better display.
Yeah.
120 megahertz LED.
Megahertz.
Hertz even, sorry. Mini LED.
Yeah.
More ports or better ports.
Both. So you're getting 3 and they're Thunderbolt 4, whereas on the M2 they are USB 4, which incorporates Thunderbolt 3.
Yep.
Not the same thing. So they are better on the M1 Pro and they run faster. Plus you get the MagSafe. Actually, you get the MagSafe on the...
You get the MagSafe, yeah.
MacBook Air,
SD card reader.
SD card reader.
HDMI out, which I'm so pleased that's come back. I've used that so much without dongle life. I've lost my dongle now. Well, not lost it. It's on my desk, but I've lost it from my...
Getting old.
Like,
support for high... impedance headphones. How do you say it?
Impedance.
You are nippy.
Greater memory bandwidth, which I definitely need.
You definitely need that. I think better battery life. Am I right in saying that? But when you take the entry level M1 Pro, that's actually a bin chip, so it has 2 fewer performance cores. But even and fewer GPU cores, but even despite that, it still outperforms the M2 for multi-threaded tasks and for graphical performance. Where it loses the M2, obviously, is it doesn't have the M1 Pro. I don't think has a ProRes encoder. Could be wrong on that.
Really good comment here from Jonas, though.
Go on.
I got thanks for joining, by the way, Jonas. I've got an M2 Air for work, and it literally is no better than my M1 Air for my kind of work, which is development. As you say, only worth it in some very specific cases. So a real life use case there. Thank you for that. That's really good.
I think this is one of those situations where it's like, would you upgrade? If you've got an M1 Air, would you upgrade to the M2 Air? There's no point. Unless you specifically want that new form factor.
But if you've got an Intel
then
Mac,
get the latest one, get the M2, and you're not going to be disappointed with that.
Just not in that blue color because it scratches.
It does. The upgrade from M1 to M3 is likely to be more significant and more compelling.
Yes, we'll get to talk about that in a bit. Stop teasing. You're like a Malteser.
Yes. So you can get the 14-inch M1 Pro on Amazon, I don't know, £1,700-ish in the UK. I've seen them cheap as well in the US. And you can still put Apple Care on. You can subscribe to that afterwards. Do it on the annual payment thing. Makes it cheap. And it's a much better computer. You're getting a lot more for your money. So for us, the M2 didn't make sense. And because it was more expensive than the M1, but not offering any real world improvement, just as Jonas pointed out, our staff who get issued MacBook Airs are still getting M1 MacBook Airs at the moment.
Yeah. The
other thing they did as well, if you recall, with the M2 MacBook Air, because we do everything here with cloud storage, we don't need lots of storage on the machine. So we just buy the 256 model. On the M2 MacBook Air, it only has one NAND flash chip on the SSD, so it runs slower, just the 256 gig model. And the M1 MacBook Air, well, we got some more of those in, and I took one apart in a video and confirmed it does still come with 2 128 gig chips.
Just quicker.
Yeah, so the M1 Air is actually quicker, and SSD is actually probably in day-to-day office use, that does make a lot of difference. So, yeah, I think for most people who are after a MacBook Air, the M1 MacBook Air is a fantastic computer at a price point where you just can't touch it. There is nothing else that you can buy that offers better build quality and overall value for money than the M1 MacBook Air at that price point. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything else.
No.
There are some lovely PC laptops, but not at that price point.
Definitely not. Speaking of opinions, got
Yeah.
another comment here from Protos X. Apple need to make sure they put their newest chip in the Pro models before an Air one comes out, in my opinion. It doesn't make sense for 14 and 16 MacBook Pros don't have the M2 before the Air. So I think what we're saying there is you're expecting to see an M2 in a MacBook Pro 14 and 16 before the M3 comes out with in an Air sometime next year.
Well, I think that I think Apple is probably going to adjust its lineup so that the 14 and 16 inch will only ever have Pro and Max chips in the foreseeable future. That's what they're for, and those chips are, if you like, extensions of the standard M1 chip. So I think the standard M2 does have to come first in that case. I think they'll ditch the 13-inch MacBook Pro, and I suspect there will be a 15-inch MacBook Air coming. So you'll get the choice of 13 or 15-inch MacBook Air with the standard M chip in, and then you can have the 14 and 16 Pros with the Pro and Max chip in.
But agree those need to come before the M3.
Yes.
And I guess then the natural thought is when will those be announced? And I think really Apple have probably, as we've already talked about, they've probably gone too quickly with M1 to M2, because now the expectation is, well, we've got to have M3 coming soon. But it's like, as you quite rightly point out, we need M2 Pro and Ultras, Max and Ultras first.
Which definitely are on the way, because we're seeing leaked benchmarks, and that's a topic we're just going to come to at the end. Let's just move on to the autumn Apple releases. And again, I picked out two things from this. First of all, just quickly, the iPad Pro got the M2.
Yeah, really needed it.
So you've got a bit more performance that you can't use, with the exception, it has to be said, of graphics performance. So if you like using your tablet for gaming, then the M2 iPad Pro is a significant upgrade over the M1 iPad Pro, provided you can find a game developer who is actually making use of that additional performance. Because bear in mind, on iPad OS, developers want to make their title available to all the range of iPads. So whether or not you can actually see all of that, I don't know. We've got, of course, DaVinci announced that they're bringing Resolve for iPad. So they've beaten Apple to the punch here. Apple aren't bringing out Final Cut Pro for the iPad yet. So Resolve on the iPad looks good. We'll test that as soon as we can get our hands on it. And Apple Watch Ultra, which didn't appeal to me at all. But Pete?
Well, I didn't think it appealed to me either. But then I started looking at it. Okay, so first of all,
this is where it all starts, though, isn't it?
First, well, I've got one. Okay, yeah. I've got one. Right. So how much does an Ultra cost?
I can see it on your screen. So, wow. 849 English coin of the realm.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, okay, you start thinking, and that's got a titanium case. It's got a premium strap, and it's got cellular. Plus, it's got all the other extra features for going in the backcountry and stuff.
It's so large that there is a small moon orbiting it as we speak.
Actually, it's got a nice heft to it. I was worried about it, but when I tried one on, actually, I prefer wearing it to my previous Apple Watch. So when you start speccing up a Series 8 watch, if you put a decent material on it rather than aluminium, so like a gold stainless steel case or just a stainless steel case and a decent strap, of course the Series 8 comes with cellular anyway, I believe, you're getting up to £829 for the 45mm one. So for another £20,
you get a better watch.
You get a titanium watch, you get the sapphire glass, you get
protection from bear attacks.
You get the satellite stuff to save you when you're out in the backcountry. You get.
Are you often out in the backcountry, Pete?
All the time.
Okay.
All the time. As anyone who lives in the UK will tell you, there's lots of really remote, isolated places which you can be lost in for days.
I wish you would try and find those places.
Yeah. Well, IKEA is an example. Anyway, so at first, I was a bit cynical. I really like my Ultra watch in a way that I've never liked an Apple Watch before. Nice. And I choose to wear it over my mechanical watch a lot of the time. Oh, and the battery life's much better. That was the big thing. 4 days of battery life, easy.
I'm not wearing it today, but I've got a G-Shock.
Oh, here we go.
A Casio G-Shock with Bluetooth and everything, and it's solar powered, so it never needs a battery, and it's always absolutely 100%.
It's solar
accurate.
powered, so it will never need a battery, says the man who lives in England. Solar and England do not match.
Look,
has it ever saved you from a bear attack, though?
no, it hasn't.
Right,
but
okay.
it's so large that if a bear was attacking me, I could take it off and throw it at the bear, and that may just buy me that second I need.
You'd need biceps the size of a small town.
All I need to do, Pete, is run faster than you. That's it.
Okay, that's probably easily done.
Well, Apple Watch Ultra, I was pretty scathing of it because it's not my cup of tea, but you've got one, and our pal Tom has got one, and you love it.
We do, yeah. So we're not always right when we first assess things. We're not always right any of the time. So there we go.
Let's move off Apple for a moment and talk about Microsoft's event. We've got new people joining us. Thank you. Welcome. So I was particularly intrigued by Microsoft's event. I thought it was an interesting launch event.
They were pleased to have you with them.
It didn't have all of the unnecessary bloat of an Apple event, shall we put it that way? It was a little bit more to the point. And there was a particularly interesting part where they were showing off the new Surface Pro 9 5G model. So this is the one that has their ARM chip in it, and it also has a machine learning core. I can't remember what they called it now. And they were showing how it could be used in conjunction with the Azure cloud service to do machine learning and AI tasks. And they were showing a designer tool creating graphics for social media via AI. You just kind of type in what you want, and the thing was coming up with ideas. And for social media graphics and stuff like that, they was looking good. And I find that a very interesting development, and interesting how they were using some on-device machine learning with this kind of offloading to the cloud business. And I think that's something that we're going to see a lot more of. And it was just interesting to see. I don't know what that means for professional designers.
There's a lot of debate about not just designers, but creatives at the moment. There's something called Chat GPT, I think it's called.
Did you see Marquez MKBHD's video on that?
I haven't, no, but is it to do with writing the script or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know whether I want to spoil it for.
No.
Maybe have a look at the video. Yeah, it's on MKBHD's channel.
I have had a play with Chat GPT, and I probably haven't tested it thoroughly enough yet. I always like to err on the side of cynical with things like this, because I've heard it before, and I'm worried that everyone's getting on the bandwagon. It's a bit of Emperor's New Clothes. It will take over from everyone. But then what you said earlier about the revelation that this was all written by an AI, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. It makes sense that ultimately computers will be able to do a lot of what we take for granted themselves, but I think that's pretty bleak in some ways. Who knows?
It is. Yeah, I'm sort of
on the fence.
On the fence with it all. I can see its use, but it also scares me as well. Anyway, just coming back to Surface Pro, of course, Microsoft released this 5G model along with the Intel model. So you've got this slightly confusing lineup where you can only get a 5G modem in the one that has the ARM chip in it. And if you're going for that one, means you have to run Windows for ARM, which has improved. Let's be fair, has improved. But where you then come to an app that's not compiled for ARM, you have to run it through an emulator, and it's fair to say it's not great.
Is it armless?
Thanks for that, Pete.
That's all right. I'm here for the rest of this podcast.
It doesn't do the emulation type stuff that the M chips do on
with Rosetta.
Yeah, it doesn't do it as well. But nonetheless, I find it exciting because it's getting there. And when Qualcomm bring out their new chip, which is designed by the Nuvia team that they bought, which won't, I mean, they might call it Snapdragon, but it's a completely new concept built by the people who came up with the underpinnings for M1. I think that that's going to be exciting to have some competition, but it ain't there yet. So, I mean, the Microsoft SQ3, so this is now the third iteration that Microsoft has done in conjunction with Qualcomm, and it is still at the end of the day a Snapdragon chip, is making progress. Geekbench 5 scores, single core 1100. It's actually perfectly reasonable performance. But your M1 iPad is 1700-ish, and your M2 iPad is about 1870. So
about the year you were born, isn't it?
Thanks for that.
Oh.
And when it comes to multi-core, you are actually older than me.
I am.
Yeah.
That's what makes it delicious.
When it comes to multi-core, the SQ3 is making 5500 versus 7200 on M1, 8400 on M2. So yeah, it's not at that level yet.
Yeah, but can you upgrade the SSD in an M1 product?
No, you can't, and you can on the Surface Pro.
Oh, Excitemify.
So, which I think is a great move. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Surface Pro, if you're interested in looking at Surface Pro, there is a video on the channel I did recently where I've compared the Surface Pro 9 i7, which I'm using today. Let me on camera. There we go.
Have you noticed any improvement in performance because he's using that?
My performance hasn't improved, Pete.
Neither has mine.
No, and I dare say that's true of every improvement to computers.
Yeah. Yeah, we're agnostic to the improvements.
Yeah. At the end of the day, this is a nice tablet. If you're looking at it purely as a tablet compared to the iPad is a better tablet.
But it is nice. I like it.
It is nice. If you want something though in this form factor with the detachable keyboard and everything else, because it runs full Windows, it's offering more.
Algernon Sour Gravy says that's why we're getting the stream stutters. It's not. We're not putting it through that.
Actually,
that would be crazy.
Well, you have to watch the video to see what the performance is like in the i7 Surface Pro 9. But you might be surprised. Steam Deck. We're not going to talk about this for long. I have done some videos on it. I don't know that I've ever even shown it to you, Pete, but I do have my Steam Deck here.
Show it to me now.
I'll just unzip it from the case. Now, those who've watched the channel will know, of course, that this is my second Steam Deck because I broke the first one. But Valve replaced it for me, and I think that is a cool thing. So if you haven't seen a Steam Deck before,
it's basically Game Gear.
It does look a bit like a Game Gear, doesn't it? It is a full PC. It's a full Linux PC, and it runs your Steam game library, or most of it. And actually, it does a really good job. I think it's that's one.
Do you know what a Game Gear is? It's disappointing, isn't it? When probably 50 or 60 or 70% of our audience do not know. They're Googling Game Gear now.
No.
But oh, look at this. Oh, you've got Ride. I've heard about this game. I saw a video on this the other day. Apparently, it's the most realistic motorcycle game ever. So, having never been on the front of a motorcycle,
I did. Am I allowed to say that I once took you on the back of my motorcycle?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
I did once.
I couldn't see the front of it though. All I could see was your helmet.
I did once take Pete on the back of the motorcycle and scrape the pegs going around the roundabout, which I don't think pleased you.
But, no. Jonas bought a Steam Deck after seeing your videos, apparently.
Oh well, I'll await my commission from Valve.
Yeah. Well, I'm awaiting Valve to launch this. So.
It was something we waited a long time for because I actually pre-ordered this last year, and it's taken Valve a long time.
Jonas remembers the Game Gear.
It's taken a long time to get to market, but I have to say Steam Deck is a fantastic thing, and I have done a couple videos on the channel already, and I'll be doing a bit more about that. I'm going to try using this for a day as my main work machine.
Really? I should like to see that. Geekery, my question is, no, I want to play. No, Geekery, my question is it better to get the most expensive model of the Steam Deck for the better screen and better storage? I was excited about getting to the point where I could ride through Amsterdam.
It's a good question. On the most expensive model, you get that anti-glare screen, but actually the anti-glare screen is also more fragile. So bear that in mind, and it scratches more easily. Better storage. I have got games on an SD card, and I can't tell the difference between loading off the SD card and the SSD. So I think I would probably go down the middle if I was doing it again. Get the 256 model. Simon
Potts is old enough to remember the Game Gear and had his first single game handheld back in '81. I'd really like to know what that was.
Are you talking about the Game & Watch, Nintendo Game & Watch?
Well, there was lots of little single games back then, wasn't there? And then, do you remember the Tomy ones that you had? Like, Do you remember those?
Yes.
And there was also like an arcade one, like a bit like Space Invaders, but
Yeah, I do remember.
it's all coming back to me now. Perhaps tell us what that is in a minute, Simon.
Right, moving on. We come to the important questions. Okay, where is the Mac Pro? And
I've got one down. No, sorry, I left it in the car.
And what is the state of the Apple Silicon transition? So just to remind ourselves, when Apple announced they were...
It was Space Invaders. Thank you, Simon.
When Apple announced the transition to Apple Silicon, it was WWDC 2020. They said that they were going to transition all of their lineup within 2 years.
Yes.
Later on, they kind of shifted that date a bit, didn't they? So they said the 2 years starts from the launch of the M1, which was November 17, 2020. And we are now at December 17, 2022.
I think you'll find it's the 17th of December, 2022.
Okay. And...
sorry, I've locked your train of thought, haven't I?
And also I saw Jonas comment. Let's have that up. Go on, let's just divert back to Steam Deck for a moment.
Sorry, guys.
This is a great thing about Steam Deck is that you can use it as an emulator to play other stuff. And people have even been using it as an emulator for the Switch. And it runs the Zelda game better
than the Switch.
Than the Switch does. Yeah.
That's impressive.
So there you go. Anyway, moving back. Mac Pro, Apple Silicon transition. Okay. So we're over 2 years. The Mac Pro still hasn't been done. I can't see it happening anytime soon either, because I don't think the M2 line of chips is the one that they're going to use to launch the M1.
Well, if they did that, even if they sort of bolted a few together, bolt's the technical term, that's going to be underwhelming, isn't it?
It is. Just be careful how technical you get there, Pete, because we might have Craig Federici trying to offer you a job or something to join their team. Or
gluing it together. Right. If they glue a few M2s together, that's not going to work out that well. It's going to be a little bit disappointing.
So here's my personal take on this.
Bye. Thanks for joining.
After 11 p.m. Okay.
Appreciate the
good night.
Yeah.
Enjoy your sleep. Maybe listen to the podcast again, and that'll help you sleep.
Yeah.
I've forgotten what I was talking about now.
So
M3 is going to be the big leap.
Yes.
Because M3 will presumably use TSMC's 3 nanometer process, which is a generational leap forward as a process node, and it would make sense to have that huge leap forward and make that the basis of the new Mac Pro. And I've done some kind of workings on this. So let's just talk through, first of all, these leak benchmarks and where we think it might be going. And I promise you guys watching now, we are nearing the conclusion of our show today. Stick with us. M2 Pro and Max are the next chips that we expect to be released. And there is a leak benchmark out there, which is widely believed to be the new chip for the Pro/Max. I mean, the current Pro and Max basically have the same CPU. The only difference is the memory bandwidth and the GPU. So assuming they do the same thing with the M2, then this is an M2 Pro or Max. The leak benchmarks show a 12-core CPU. So that's 2 more cores than the M1 Pro and Max. But what we don't know is whether they're performance or efficiency cores. I suspect they might actually be efficiency cores. But
really? I was going to go the other way.
Well, maybe. I don't know. It would involve too much mathematics to come to an effective conclusion. The clock speed is interesting. 3.68 gigahertz. So M1, that's 3.2. The M2 went up to 3.5 or thereabouts. So now we're going up to 3.7. So making it faster. I suspect it is on the same process node. Based on the figures, it's got to be on the same process node as the standard M2. So that means, as some people have been saying, M2 Pro Max will be on 3 nanometer. I don't believe that will happen personally.
No,
it doesn't seem to make sense.
No, it's going to use the same one because the 3 nanometers is going to be for the next gen for the M3s. Jose M asks a really good question at this point. The Mac Studio with the M1 Ultra is awful fast, and it is. Do we still need a Mac Pro? So I'd like to say my view on this.
Go on.
it's not all about performance. So the short answer is yes, I think we do, but not just because of performance, because you're absolutely right. That Mac Studio is a beast, but the Pro hasn't always just been about performance. It's been about PCI Express. It's been about the cards. It's been about the hardware. It's been about the scalability and expandability of the platform. And that's something that Apple haven't addressed yet. So you've got a lot of professionals in circles such as the music industry, that kind of thing, where they need to plug in stuff that you couldn't really plug in to a Mac Studio. And that's why I think we do still need a Pro. And not only that, but Apple have confirmed that a Pro is coming.
They have. And we'll talk in just a moment. I'll share the performance figures with you as well, because whilst the M1 Ultra is fast from a professional workstation point of view, it could be better. So just coming back to that clock speed and these leak benchmarks, what we're seeing is single core on Geekbench 5. And I know Geekbench isn't the be all and end all, but where a benchmark can be really useful is when you're comparing processors of the same architecture. So that is a fair comparison. We're not comparing to x86 necessarily here, and I recognize there are lots of different benchmarks and different processors score differently in different benchmarks.
Yeah.
But as a general guide to performance, I think this is fair. So we've got 2027 on single core on this Leap benchmark and 14,888 on multi. Now, the score that I get off of my M1 Max notebook is 1782 single core and 12733 on multi. So what that means is an improvement in single core terms of about
13.7% roughly.
Did you just do that math in your head, Pete?
I'd like to say I did.
And about how much on multi-core?
I'm going to go just a shade under 17%. So maybe say round it up to 16.9%.
So it's a nice speed bump. Definitely a nice speed bump. But how are they achieving this? They've increased the clock speed by just over 14%.
And 14.3.
14.3%. And they put 2 additional cores in to get this fairly modest speed increase. So I think that tells you that this isn't a generational leap. This isn't going to 3 nanometers. This is looking very much like just an extension of the standard M2. And perhaps a little bit underwhelming, but really, who wants to have to upgrade their computer a year later or feel the need to upgrade it? We don't want that. So I don't think at this point in time we need to have an M2 Pro or Max that's a massive improvement over the M1. Because those who bought the M1 will probably wait for M3. Those who buy the M2, they'll wait for M4, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. And it shows us that when we get to 3 nanometers in the M3, then that should be a big leap forward.
More so than the M1 to the M2.
So I did some research on TSMC's website. So their 3 nanometer process, which is already up and running as far as I'm aware. In fact, they're actually working on the 2 nanometer process now. It offers 15% better performance and 30% less power consumption versus the 5 nanometer process for the same clock performance. And that also allows you then for a 70% increase in transistor density. So it comes back to what we were saying before. We can get more transistors into less space and more cores, and they're more thermally efficient, so longer battery life. They can run faster without overheating, more performance. It's all good. All good. It's what we want. And more GPU cores as well on the top chip. So, and that is an area where, Apple has made huge leaps in GPU performance, but they do really need to up their game to compete with the PCs. And if you can hear some clunking and stuff, it's because Ben's swinging in his chair over there.
He's not used to the rigors of live streaming. I think he's doing really well.
He's doing well.
Wake up, Ben. Wake up.
Jonas comment. Isn't 17% performance increase in 1 to 2 years quite fantastic? Yeah, it is. Yeah, no doubt about it. I think, don't misunderstand my comments. What I'm saying is to get 17% performance increase, they've increased the clock speed and added 2 cores. So that indicates that, and if you're going down that road, that means more power consumption, less battery life to achieve that performance. So whereas a generational leap, you won't have that holdback, if you like.
Yeah, it's more about they've done it by, can I use the term brute forcing it? And you just put more horsepower in it, as opposed to the architectural leap forward that was the original Apple silicon chips.
Yeah. So M3 for the Mac Pro. Let's just consider this and compare to PC workstations. And
I'd also like to at some point introduce my theory on this, which is unscripted from here.
Okay, well, please do. So I mentioned I got this Threadripper Pro workstation. So mine is the 32-core Threadripper Pro, 64 threads. I do not need a computer that has that much power, but I wanted it, and
it's quite powerful, isn't it? It's quite powerful.
It is quite powerful. So put that through Geekbench, and what you get is a multi-core score of just shy of 30,000. And I'm achieving that because it's got 8-channel RAM as well, and I've got 8 sticks of RAM for a total of 128 gigs. So if you look up that particular Threadripper chip on Geekbench, you will find slower results, but they always have not all of the RAM slots used. So I've achieved just shy of 30,000. The M1 Ultra scores 23,000. So it's not quite competing with the PC space as it is at the moment. So there isn't an M2 Ultra yet, but based on these elite benchmarks, let's theoretically assume that Apple are going to make one. Then that might be achieving something like 27,000. So even with the M2, you're still not competing with a PC that I bought just over 2 years ago. Or 2 years ago, yeah. So it's not enough for the Mac Pro. So I think that we still need more. So let's assume that M3 Ultra comes along. Well, that generational leap forward should push it ahead of that. But again, that if you want to be Apple and you want to have the coup de grace, you want to really achieve something amazing, then what you want to do is stick 4 of those chips together, the M3 Max, to come up with something new for the Mac Pro. Now, just imagine if they did that. Suddenly, you've destroyed the PC space, or as it is at the moment. I don't mean the PC space. I mean x86. It's the power efficiency. I mean, obviously, it's going to use quite a bit of power if you've got 4 of the chips, but it's going to be less than x86. You've got all of that memory bandwidth. It could be amazing. We're fairly confident that Apple can indeed join 4 of these things together. And that would be a Mac Pro, wouldn't it? That would be something that people would salivate over and want to pay money for. But just look at the GPU a minute. And we've got comments firing in, and I know you want to talk about it. Let me just finish this thread of thought.
Yeah, please do.
Just take the M2's GPU performance. It did a 50% improvement over M1. That's partially due to additional cores, higher clock speed, all the rest of it. What can Apple do with M3? Well, they can increase that performance even more. And if they've got loads of cores and 4 of those chips stuck together, what's the potential? Can they get to the point where they're competing with the 3090 Ti or the, in thinking more in professional terms, the NVIDIA's A100 card? I believe they could, and possibly even exceed that performance. So bearing in mind that by the time we see those chips, graphics performance from all of those companies will have moved on a bit. But if Apple can deliver CPU performance that's way ahead and GPU performance that's good enough, then you've got a Mac Pro.
Yes.
And if they can get the PCI lanes sorted out, so PCI Express, so you've got that upgradability, driver support, and everything else, I think that will be a force to be reckoned with, and that will be the Mac Pro. When would that happen? Well, if we're assuming that it's going to be based on those chips, the M3, then not until 2024. So hopefully I'm completely wrong and Apple does something before that. But who knows?
Interesting comments.
My thoughts.
Interesting thoughts.
Shall we take a few comments?
Let's do that, and then I'll put to you my alternative theory.
Okay. Well, let's just whip back to Simon Potts, who is asking, could I install SteamOS on my Mac Pro 2013? Should I? Well, that's the easier question. I would say no, because Why would you? The gaming performance is just not going to be there unless you're going down the route of eGPU, and then we get into all sorts of complexities with a different OS. I'm going to say that yes, it might be possible, but I probably wouldn't do it myself. Helpful advice.
Yeah,
I'm here.
Yeah, yes, you can, but you probably shouldn't.
I'm not even sure how you would go about it. You'd have to mess about with bootloaders, and yeah, let's not go down there. Chris Ware.
Hello.
Hello.
It's lovely and toasty. In the same way that a salad drawer in a fridge is nice and toasty.
Yeah, we're doing okay. We've got the air conditioning on heat mode, and it's working all right.
If you've been wondering what that low rumble is throughout the podcast, it's Dave and I talking.
Let's take Jose M. If Apple is it Jose or Jose? Sorry,
Jose, I would
I've
say.
butchered that. Sorry. If Apple is in preparation for a Mac Pro, they will wait for 3nm TSMC production. Imagine the marketing possibilities with an M3 on 3nm. Don't disagree with you at all. I think it makes perfect sense. Apple's already missed the 2-year deadline. They may as well now just make sure that the new Mac Pro comes out good. And they're still selling the Intel Mac Pro, and there are still people buying that in professional environments.
Yeah, because they have to.
Need it. Yeah. So I don't think Apple's in any rush to do that. Mac Pro has always been a very tiny niche percentage of their computer market. So Jonas says Intel has brute forced for years.
Yes, they have.
Certainly have. Still at it. Still doing the same thing. Jose, sorry, says Intel and AMD are always increasing the power consumption. Well, or consumption. Slight typo there, but I think we quite like that. The idea of a consumption.
Consumption. Too many jokes.
Yeah. They are, and also they've improved it because, of course, Intel now has gone down this road of using efficiency cores and performance cores. In fact, the latest i7 that's in this Surface Pro does that exact thing. I don't think they do it quite as well as Mac does it, but there we go. And the next comment from Jose, if we talk about needed computing power, we talk it from a gamer's perspective or from someone who needs it for work? No. So Mac Pro is definitely...
We're talking about Mac Pro.
Yeah, that's we're talking about professionals here who need massive multi-threaded performance. So that would be developers, people running virtual machines. Music production is a classic example of that. For people who are doing film scores and that kind of thing, where they need loads and loads of tracks going.
And feature film editors as well.
Yeah. Video editing is another area. There's lots of different areas where multi-threading is really important. If we're talking about the home computer, you've got everything now. The Mac Mini is probably sufficient for most people, or the iMac, and the Mac Studio if you want some more horsepower.
You've got a new name.
Have I?
Yeah, you're now known as Not Pete.
I feel this is really harsh.
Evan, first of all, thanks for joining. Secondly, it's Dave's channel, so I feel you should know his name. This is Dave, the eye candy of constant geekery. And in another blow for you, Erin is not, well, she's not in this room. She's in the cupboard nearby.
I don't see that as a blow at all. I see that as a significant plus.
Maybe he tuned in in hopes of seeing, some airheaded entertainment.
Yeah. Not today, I'm afraid. In all seriousness, I felt like it was mean to make Erin come in at the weekend, whereas I was quite happy bringing my son in.
And I quite like Algernon's comment here. Why does Pete hold the comedic side of your gig when surly it should be Dave? I think I think that's deliberately a typo there, because you are quite surly, aren't you?
I don't know that surly is the right word. Curmudgeon, grumpy, miserable. Those would be better words.
I'm pretty sure amongst those words in a thesaurus, surly would be there.
I'm just blessed with genetics that make me look miserable. But,
yeah, it's called.
Most of the time, I'm not.
Resting geek face, I think it's called.
Yeah.
I don't know why I hold the comedic side, because I'm not that funny.
You don't make me laugh.
A certain Mr. T Vine, yeah, definitely. And going back. Sorry.
No.
Just Protos X says, do you think Apple should stick with mini LED on the higher end Pro models or move to some form of OLED like the iPhones have? That's one for you, really.
I think one of the downsides of OLED screens is image retention issues and also their lifespan. I think having compared both, because I had a Razer PC laptop. I'm pointing at Ben. Not that you can see Ben. Ben uses a similar laptop.
He's over there.
And it has an OLED display, which is fantastic. But when it comes to HDR content, I would say the mini LED display is better. So, it's. I don't know. I think it's good technology.
You do look like. Is it Tim Vine? You
do look
a little bit like him.
Have you ever seen him do his pen behind the ear sketch?
No.
You need to watch that.
Is it quite good?
Just hilarious. Absolutely. He has a whole pack of ballpoint pens and this song going, pen behind the ear, which just repeats. And then he tries to throw a pen and catch it in his ear. And the sketch continues until he succeeds.
Sounds dull.
It's hilarious. Yeah.
Anyway.
Go.
What if going back to the whole Mac Pro thing, and bear with me here because there is a train of thought here. If we were looking at Apple originally, put COVID and supply chain, everything crazy that's gone on in the world, bearing it in mind, those things no one knew were going to happen when no one knew that was going to happen when Apple Silicon was planned. They were intending for us to have a Mac Pro by now. They've told us that themselves. What if we've got this all wrong and we're talking about it's got to come in the M3 generation of processors? Well, knowing what we know about what Mac Pros have to do, what if Apple are working on a completely separate and dedicated suite of chips or chip for the Pro alone? Let's just say the P series chips, and they are distinctly different, complementary in terms of fundamental architecture, so that they can run Mac OS and all that kind of stuff, but actually their own chip that allow for the things that a Mac Pro needs to do. Because if you look at where we are, even if we hadn't have had all the supply chain issues, we've got M2, base M2 at the moment, and we've still got the Max and Ultra, one would think, to come. We've seen leaks for that. So even if we hadn't have had the delays, we'll really be looking at an M3 coming imminently when for a Mac Pro. Or are we barking up the wrong tree? Is there another chip in the offing that we're expecting to see, or we could expect to see?
Well, who knows? But it's an excellent hypothesis.
I've got no basis for that other than just observing the original timeline where we are. You even said, and I think it was a subconscious thing, assuming they're using this series of chips for the Mac Pro.
Well,
what do you guys think?
I think you might be onto something, Pete. Sometimes you do have good ideas.
Happened once.
This does seem like a good idea. Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. You've got to factor in they can't afford for it to go wrong. When they're making a consumer chip, people are going to go out and buy Apple notebooks, regardless of what's in it, because they're buying into the brand and lifestyle and all the rest of it, whether we like that or not. That is why a lot of people buy Apple. If you're talking about Pro users, companies that are expected to part with tens of thousands of dollars for a computer, and they will do that if it's the right computer, then Apple has to make sure it is the right computer. And I think the biggest challenge for them is not making a super fast chip. I think they can do that. Its graphics performance is behind. There's no facility currently within the Apple Silicon architecture for external GPUs because the metal framework just doesn't really cater for having these non-Apple Silicon GPUs. So I don't think that's going to happen. I used to think it might, but I'm not convinced now. So that's possibly holding them back. And I think the PCI Express issue, seeing the problems they've had with Thunderbolt and USB, they're playing catch up in a big way on some of these fundamental things. So yeah, it does kind of make sense that they might develop a bespoke P chip.
Yeah, whether they call it a P chip, I don't know. But Jonas says, can't M2 have been planned to be M3 on the 3 nanometer process, and all the issues have pushed it back some years?
Wouldn't surprise me at all. I think you might be right.
Yeah, but I don't think that invalidates the hypothesis around the Pro chip.
And I think there's a lot going on as well, isn't there, with TSMC opening their fab in the United States as well, which is going to make a big difference to capacity. So I think we're going to see these issues alleviate, and Apple will push through more things.
And just another thing, and the nomenclature of the chips, you've got the M1, the M1 Max, the M1 Ultra. Now, we were all expecting an M1
Super Ultra
Pro.
Or Pro. Well, no, because it was a... Yeah, okay. But then they used that.
Where?
On the M1 Pro.
On the M1 Pro chip?
Yeah.
M1 Max.
You are getting old, aren't you?
Anyway.
It goes M1 Pro, then M1 Max, then M1 Ultra.
There's an M1 Pro chip?
Yes, Pete.
Oh, my goodness. I need some more memory bandwidth.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to Pete's amazing geeking knowledge.
Yeah.
Pete, you know there's an M1 Pro. It's in the 14-inch
Pro,
the entry
Senile Live. That's my new channel, where I basically start talking about something, and then I fit.
Anyway, good.
When are we starting the podcast, Dave?
Yeah, good work. Well, let's speak about the podcast, and then we'll come back and take some of your questions to finish up. So a lot of you have been asking where the podcast is. So we started the podcast on the main channel, and eventually we had to move it off onto its own channel because the YouTube algorithm couldn't cope with the fact that we would put up a video of short form content, 10 minutes or something, and then a long form thing which people don't typically watch immediately. They might put it in their save for watch later list or do it at their convenience. So we found every time we launched a podcast, it killed whatever video launched before it. So we moved it onto its own channel, and we got up to north of 1,000 subscribers relatively quickly. And then it really stalled. And, we were adding a few subscribers a month, losing a few. It wasn't
Felt
really
like we were treading water, really.
And then the viewer figures and the listener figures were actually slightly declining, and not very strong if we did an episode that wasn't Apple focused. So we should listen to the audience, but there's only so much that we can talk about when it comes to Apple before we're just rehashing the same thing over and over again. And
we don't want to be that channel, do we?
No. We also felt that the format was possibly a little bit stagnant, and on occasion was possibly a little bit too opinionated, and which isn't really what we're trying to be. We're trying to just have a polite discussion and be nice to everyone. Doesn't always work that way. We can be a bit
scathing.
Yeah, it's our British sense of humor. We don't really mean it. That's the thing. But if for non-Brits, perhaps it doesn't always come across in the way it was intended. So that, and also the pressures that come with producing something like the podcast. So I was working with my son Tom, and he was editing the podcast, but he's now moved into his job. So he doesn't have time to do that anymore. I don't have time to edit it. That's the other issue. And our business has taken up quite a lot of our time. Pete's been traveling overseas, picking up work, and therefore we haven't had much time to prepare and deliver podcasts. So we felt like we were maybe just rushing it a little bit, not preparing enough, and that's not how we want to treat our audience. So we took the decision just to stop for a moment and take stock and decide what the new format should be. And I think we've come to the conclusion that we'd like to do our podcasts less frequently due to the time constraints. But we feel that doing them as a live stream would actually be better, because then there's no editing issues to do. And we
get to engage more with you guys, which is really good. We love
enjoy that. So I think that's possibly the way that we want to take it forward, and we'll just do it on the main channel. So hopefully that sounds good to you guys, and I think we'd be interested in getting some feedback from you on how you would like to see that. So leave a comment. If you're obviously, any comment you leave now will disappear from the video once the live stream is finished. So either pop back and leave a comment hook us up on Twitter or Mastodon, or drop us an email. Go old school, hello@constantgeekery.com. Just let us know what some ideas, and we'll process all of those over the winter break, and maybe come back in January with something. So I think, you know, the idea of doing them live and less frequently, but a bit more engagement and a bit more interesting.
If you really want to go old school, then use the Constant Geekery carrier pigeon or smoke signals.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Email is not old school. It's perfectly acceptable as a form of electronic communication.
It's not old school for you, Pete, because you are that much older that it feels much more modern to you.
Bob Cratchit loved it.
Anyway, what do you think? Here's something else as well to think about. Obviously, the quality of audio on a podcast, if you're just listening to it, is very important. Well, which is why we're using the podcast microphones today, because it enables us to actually record the audio. Although we're not recording it today, I should clarify. But we could record it. We're just testing that out. So we could stream it live on YouTube, so you can watch it live or come and watch it afterwards. Or if we record the audio, we could potentially still maintain all the usual sources. So your favorite podcast platform of choice, you'd be able to listen to the audio of the live stream.
Yeah. And you can listen to old episodes and see how wrong we were.
Yes, absolutely. We do need to make a decision on that, because we pay every month for the hosting of the podcast. And I think we should just make it clear that the cost of even just hosting it is more than we get in YouTube revenue and other stuff. So we're happy to do that if it's useful, you know, and if people are enjoying it, and if the audience is growing. We want to be progressing. It's not all about numbers, but you want to feel like, you know, we're progressing and reaching wider audiences, and we'd like to get a variety of opinions in and get some community going. So
yeah, it would be good. Thank you for your comment, Jose. It would be great to hear your thoughts over the next few weeks and see what we can come back with that's a bit fresh, and that, you know, really engages with people, rather than just something that's a bit stale.
Yeah, and you know, it gives Pete some time as well to come up with some better jokes. Which
I've had 3 months. I've had 3 months.
It's not working well so far.
Yeah.
Good. So let's take a few comments to finish up. For
you guys and Erin, she's not here.
She really isn't.
She's not here. Well, she stopped making noises and sobbing. There's no sobbing coming from the cupboard anymore.
Right. I think we should as well just say that we have had need of Erin in a different area of our main business. And since that's the business that makes the money, which pays her wages, then you
may not be seeing as much of Erin.
Yeah.
What we could do, which would be just as good, is have a cutout of her in the background, because
I feel that would be more advantageous. Probably it wouldn't speak.
Yeah.
No, we will get Erin back for some live shows and stuff. Don't worry, she's not gone anywhere, and we haven't done her in or anything. Promise.
Well done, Ben. Yes, very good.
Oh, we got to highlight that comment. Go on, Ben. Well done, Ben. Fast on the keys. He's putting his arms up like this.
Yeah, we're going to call him Alicia from now on. Alicia Keys. See what I like that?
So Ben is, just to give you an idea of what we're doing on the main channel as well. The idea with the channel for me, once I got past the initial, I've started a YouTube channel, did I mean to do that? Is to try and make it into a sustainable business. And I immediately thought of my 2 sons. So Tom, the eldest, he's had 2 years of training, and he's an accomplished video editor and everything. And with those skills, he's gone off to learn to be a software developer. So that's great. But we can always call upon him to do some editing from time to time.
We can.
Want to really upset him. And Ben is now starting with me. So my YouTube has always been an opportunity to train and give back to younger people who are learning their craft. Likewise, Erin has had a chance to learn as well. So trying to use it for some good. The money that the channel makes goes back into buying equipment so that to review on the channel. In the long term, it will provide an income for Ben. So it'll be something that we give to him in the future to work on. And he's already learning editing and DaVinci Resolve, and
good lad.
he's already edited a couple of videos that you may have watched on the channel. So There we go.
Chris Ware suggests that we swap out Erin for a different member of staff each week. Yeah, the trouble is, though, once you raise the bar, Chris, rather than just keeping it at the bottom of the barrel, people expect that every week. So, you know, the paper cutout's probably better.
Yeah.
And then Evan Rogers says, favourite movie of 2022? Well, that is a good question, because there have been no good movies in 2022 that I can recall.
The new Death on the Nile is... We watched that the other night. It wasn't too bad.
No.
With Kenneth Branagh as playing Poirot. I don't know. Yeah,
he is good as Poirot. I'll give you that.
Yeah, it's a bit more gritty and.
He did the one on the train with the Orient Express as well, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was reasonable entertainment.
No Way Home. Yes, that was that 2022, Chris? You see, you joined a bit late, Chris, so you might have missed the Spider-Man Easter egg earlier on in the conversation. So feel free to go and see if you can find that. But yes, that was a good movie. Actually, it was quite emotional.
Comment from Jonas. Missed the weekly podcast, but realised the amount of time it takes. I got to say, actually, our audience is very understanding, and we really do appreciate that and your patience. Special editions once every few months would be a nice treat. Yeah, for sure. We'll certainly try and do that, and definitely cover live events as well. Yeah, thank you. What else have we got?
Keep Erin. She's awesome. We have kept Erin. She's in a cupboard. How more keep can we keep someone than in a cupboard?
Everyone thinks Erin's awesome until they meet her.
Yeah.
Just going to say that. Yeah. Yeah, sorry for the troubles with the video pausing a bit. I don't know what's happening with that today. I'm convinced it's
we
not
think
our
it's
connection.
Streamcast. What I have seen, and you guys can see me pointing at something, that we've got a little monitor screen here. You see where it gives the live and then the viewer numbers in the top left-hand corner. Every so often we get a little Wi-Fi icon there with very low signal, which I wonder is StreamYard. There it is, StreamYard saying.
Yeah, so I think probably StreamYard is the software that we're using to display the comments and everything else. So I think they've got problems. Anyway, I think we ought to wrap things up. It's been interesting. It's been a great year in tech releases. There's been lots of exciting stuff and lots of stuff that we haven't even talked about today because it's not stuff we've featured on the channel.
Yeah, not had time to gather. I thought someone mentioned earlier about iCloud encryption, for example, and just not had time to really collate everything. So it's probably something we'll talk about next time we get together, maybe, when we've got something useful to say on it. Rather, we don't tend to shoot from the hip as much as you'd think. We like to have considered comments, so we will get to that. But thanks for joining today, everyone.
Yeah, for sure. And look out for future content. We'll be probably have one more video come up before the end of the year, and then we'll take a little break and we'll assess the feedback we get, decide what we're doing with future live shows. We have been thinking about doing some video work around vehicles, electric vehicles specifically. So if you're interested in that, watch this space. We'll let you know about that. And otherwise, there's nothing else to say, but thank you so much. I hope you had a really great 2022 despite all of the horrible things that are going on. And I hope you get a good break over the winter, whatever you're doing, so we can have a great year next year too. And we look forward to seeing you again soon for some more geekery.
What is it that I say at the end? Cheerio. Cheerio.
See you, everyone.